Learning to have sex by watching porn is like learning how to drive watching The Fast and the Furious.
Eleanor Hadley is a sex coach and embodiment expert who's helped thousands of couples reconnect with pleasure.
With over a decade of experience and training in sexology, yoga, and somatic therapy, she helps you unlock real intimacy through tantra and embodiment.
So, blowjob, I always talk about the rhythm and really setting a nice kind of pace. You're kind of creating like a pepper grinder sort of motion. And I like to go 1, 2, 3, and then deep. You can kind of emulate deep throating in a way that is more sustainable for you.
How do you make a girl squirt?
Thing is with squirting is that squirting and orgasm can happen together, but they are also often completely separate things that happen. So you might squirt and not orgasm, and you might orgasm and not squirt, or you might actually have them both together, but it's not this like holy grail of orgasm.
What's the number one thing that holds people back from having crazy, mind-blowing, passionate, deep, intimate, connected sex?
Number one thing I would say is...
Eleanor, it's so awesome to have you here. I'm very excited for this conversation, and I want to get right in. And from your perspective as a sex educator and someone who's worked in your industry for so long, what's the number one thing that holds people back from having crazy, mind-blowing, passionate, deep, intimate, connected sex, like a sex life like that? What's holding them back?
Number one thing I would say is shame. Absolutely. I think that there are so many people who have these deep-seated beliefs about sexuality that hold us back from actually really exploring the depth of pleasure that is capable for us. And we hold ourselves back from prioritizing our pleasure, from advocating for our pleasure, from speaking up in the bedroom. And that's the number one thing. There's, technique and all of these other things that can come into play. But a lot of the time it's shame that really comes down to it.
And for someone who's just stumbled across this and maybe they've clicked on the video because it sounds interesting, how would you explain what it is you actually do? Like, take me into the world of Eleanor, the sex educator.
So I'm a certified sex educator and embodiment practitioner, and the work that I do is all about helping you to prioritize your pleasure and really connect with your body and have better sex, essentially. So it's all about relating and intimacy, and I work with people one-on-one to have better sex lives, to be able to communicate with their partners even more, to feel more comfortable in their own body and own their sexuality, to reclaim their sexuality. I have online courses where we go into different topics like seduction and lap dance and movement and libido and tongue tactics and all of these different things that are all around the topic of embodiment and sexuality.
It's very exciting. Okay. And so what can somebody really expect from, like, why should they pay attention to it as a conversation? It doesn't matter if they're a guy or a girl in a straight relationship, a gay relationship. Why should they stop everything they're doing and pay attention to what we're going to talk about?
Because everybody has sex. Everybody thinks about sex every single day, and it's a really important part of our relationships. And there's definitely people out there who are asexual, and this podcast probably isn't for them, and that's totally fine. But so many of us think about sex, and it's such a huge part of our lives. We all exist because of sex, and it's something that is so often shrouded in taboo and shame. And part of my work is to speak openly and honestly about it, because it is a normal thing that we do in our everyday lives, and it can always be better.
Why is there such taboo around it? Like, I grew up being told, you never talk about politics, sex, or religion at the dinner table. And I think after COVID, you don't talk about vaccines, sex, religion, politics at the dinner table, and money, right? It's like in that conversation, it's like you shouldn't talk about. And it's funny when I'm with any of my friends, these are all conversations we have. We're always talking about politics, money, sex, relationships, and so I'm curious, why do people have such this taboo kind of idea around it? I think our generation is probably a lot less, but it's still definitely a stigma.
It definitely is a stigma, and I think that that's why we need to have more conversations about it, because the more that we break down the taboo, the more that we kind of like unravel the shame associated with it, and that leads to more pleasure. And I think it's a really multifaceted issue, but I think that a lot of the taboo around sex comes from our society, our culture, from religious beliefs that are kind of just weaved into our culture. And essentially, I believe that sex is incredibly powerful and it can be fully transcendental. And so the powers that be don't want you to think about sex too much. They don't want you to realize that your body is so capable of experiencing this depth of pleasure, because then you wouldn't need to kind of be controlled by all these other things, these outside forces, if you know that I actually have this ability inside my own body to experience such like transcendent states of bliss. And that's not to say everyone's having transcendental sex. A lot of us aren't, but it is possible. And I think that shaming us for our sexuality it keeps us small and it keeps us kind of compliant. And so talking about sex, talking about money, talking about politics, these are actually really important things to discuss and to feel comfortable with, because I just think that shame is just this like enemy of, of moving forward.
What is this transcend? I don't even say that word.
Transcendental. When you're in like a transcendent state, like
a bliss state.
Yeah, like think of like being on mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of state that you can reach with amazing sex, right? You can have these full body energy orgasms. That's possible. That's kind of more of a tantric practice. And that's not necessarily something that the everyday person needs to experience to have good sex. But I just think it's really interesting to recognize that the body is capable of that. And so if you're having sex right now, that's just kind of like, okay, I want you to know that it can be incredible.
Yeah. So one thing you were saying to me before we started recording, you're like, there's kind of like this base, this foundation, but everybody wants the tips. Everybody wants to know how to make a girl squirt, which we might get into apparently in this episode. Everybody wants these tongue tactics. Everybody wants these tips. But you said there's so much more underneath the surface that people actually realize later on. Can you break this down? What is this?
So I like to use the analogy of a cake. So just come with me on this journey for a moment. So I want you to imagine that you're in your kitchen and you're about to make a cake. You've been given a recipe by someone, but you've never made this cake before. And so you go and you get all of your ingredients. You're getting the flour, the sugar, but you don't realize some of the ingredients have been mislabeled. So what you think is sugar that you're pouring into your mix is actually salt. And then at the same time as you're mixing up your cake, this is an analogy for your sex life, you've got people coming into the kitchen and going, oh, I'm going to put this in, I'm going to put this in. And like they're seeding these beliefs essentially. So imagine someone's walked past your bowl, your mixing bowl, and they're like, oh, I'm going to put some pickles in there. And you're like, I didn't know that pickles went in a cake, but okay, I don't know. Because you're growing up and you're getting these beliefs kind of seeded into your mind. And so you make the cake and then you go over to your oven. Your oven represents your body. And you're like, I've never used this oven before, but I'm going to try. And I'm going to set the temperature and I'm just going to see what happens. And so you put your cake in the oven. You don't know how long to put it in for either because you've never experimented with this oven. And then you bring it out. It's a little bit soggy. It's salty. And it got a bunch of pickles in it. And so you go, okay, well, I don't know what my cake is meant to look like. I've never made a cake before. It's the first time that I've been here. I don't know what my sexuality is meant to look like. And so you're like, okay, I guess like I'll try it. Oh, it's not very good. I know what I'll do. I'll get a bunch of icing and glitter and sprinkles and toppings and I'll just put that all over the top. You're chopping up strawberries. You're like putting glitter all over it, trying to make this like a delicious cake. And in my mind, that represents the sex toys, the sex parties, the tips and the tricks, all of these things that you kind of add on, these things that are nice to have. There's nothing wrong with glitter. There's nothing wrong with icing, but it's not going to change the taste of the salty, undercooked pickle cake at the end of the day. And so what this represents is that we grow up with a society and a culture that says that sex is dirty, wrong, taboo, shameful, you shouldn't want it. If you do, especially if you're a woman, if you do want sex, then you're a slut, you're this and that. And then you get all these beliefs from movies, from TV, from media, from social media, from family and friends and religion. All of these things are kind of sprinkled into your cake while it's baking. And then also we're often not really empowered to learn about our own bodies, what turns us on, what turns us off, how to engage with our own pleasure. And so that's the oven. And then you go, okay, well, I'm not really satisfied with my sex life, and you don't know why. And so you go, I'm going to go to the sex shop, and I'm going to go and I'm going to get all these vibes, and I'm going to get handcuffs, and I'm going to watch 50 Shades of Grey, and I'm going to like try all these things. And it might be nice. It might be a really good time. But underneath, you're like, oh, I still feel guilty for enjoying this, or I still feel like I can't fully express myself and let go. I still don't feel like I can talk to my partner about the type of positions that I want to try. And so I really think that it's so important that we get to that foundation before we add on all of the icing and the glitter and the toppings.
So the toppings would be like a dopamine chasing thing to try and like a Band-Aid?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. And so are you saying that the foundation is something, because you mentioned guilt and stuff there, is the foundation something that you haven't dealt with suppressed emotions and not communicated your needs properly, or is it not learn how to properly do sex on a different level? I'm not really quite getting this one. Yeah.
So it's this level of not really understanding the way that we want to experience sex, having this shame and this guilt so that we're not expressing ourselves. And then, yeah, absolutely, there's this lack of connection, right? A lot of the time we think that having sex is the connection. And yes, it's one of the most intimate, connected things that you can do. But if you don't feel comfortable speaking to your partner about what you're desiring, if you don't know too much about the way that your own body works and the things that turn you on and turn you off, then it's hard for us to really reach that depth of pleasure.
You know what I found very, very interesting? That 97.8% of you that listen and view this podcast haven't yet subscribed. Now, if you're looking for the one way that you can actually help us build this show into something that's going to be absolutely incredible and life-changing for you, the one thing you can do is to hit that subscribe button, because it takes a lot of time, effort, and money that we put into this podcast to make it what it is. And we've made it very clear that we never want to run ads or sponsors or anything like that on this show. So the only way that we can actually grow this channel is by subscribers. And I promise to you that if you hit that subscribe button and you help this show grow, then I'm going to continually keep bringing more, bigger, and better guests to teach you the skill set and the mindset that you wish you learned earlier in life. So please, it'll mean the world to me if you hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and do that right now. Now let's get into this episode. So you became a sex educator, because I was asking before we started, I'm like, how did you kind of get into this work? It's like, do you wonder, like, I really like sex, or I'm really good at sex. I've had lots of good compliments. I should get into this, or is it like a fascination? And you were saying that you actually went and got certified as a sex educator.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, what was the biggest thing when you went to this whole world and learning this world of sex education? What was probably the biggest thing for you that was like the myth broken, or the aha moment, or you're like, holy shit, I didn't understand that. I've been doing it like this my whole life. What was like the biggest thing that you got?
Oh gosh, there's so many things. So like the study of sexology is so fascinating, and it's about, not just the science and the anatomy, but it's about the way that our brain connects to our pleasure. And I think that one of the biggest things for me is talking about the difference in our desire types. And this is something that I find just absolutely rocks the world of all my clients when they first learn about it.
Like the archetypes?
The differences between spontaneous and responsive desire. Have you heard about these two?
Never.
So this is something that's just so helpful for us to understand about the way that we approach desire and our libido in particular. So we have these two different styles. One's called responsive and one's spontaneous. And you tend to sit in either one of these camps, sometimes a little bit in between depending on context. So spontaneous desire is the way that the media will portray sex. And it's like, oh, cool, I see naked person, I'm turned on, I'm hard, let's go, right? And that's kind of like the typical script. But someone who has more of a responsive desire for sex needs to feel physically aroused before they feel a mental desire for sex. So it's like, which one comes first? Is it the desire or the arousal? And often what happens with couples is if they have this mismatch in desire, one person has this spontaneous desire instantly ready for sex, and the desire is there, and then suddenly their body responds and they're aroused. Whereas the other person might feel like, oh, what, you want sex all of a sudden? Like, we were just doing the dishes. I'm not even in a sexually relevant context. I haven't gotten there yet. My mind is not caught up to where you are. Their body needs to feel the arousal, and then their mind goes, oh, this is really nice. I actually think I want sex now too. And so that concept is so, so helpful for a lot of couples that are dealing with this like desire discrepancy.
Is there a way you can discover which one you are? So you're saying, if I understand correctly, one's more visually see something that makes me aroused. I'm like, oh, can go. And the other is their body needs to feel some sort of arousal, and then their mind's turned on.
Yeah, it's not always visual. It's just more that someone could be in a completely sexually irrelevant context, and they're like, oh, I could have sex right now. And it wouldn't take them very long to get there and for their body to be ready. But for other people, they need that build up. They need the time to feel ready for sex. And it's not necessarily a gendered thing. I find a lot of clients, especially a lot of clients of mine, feel like they have this discrepancy between their partners. And it's just a game changer. And to find out, it really, like, the description will sort of resonate with you if you're like, oh yeah, I could go anytime, or no, I need time to get there.
You mentioned sexology. How long has this been a study? I never knew this was a thing.
Yeah, I don't know like when it was first like invented, although Masters and Johnson were the first sort of sex researchers that really popularized a lot of the studies that we sort of refer to today. There's been a lot of studies that have come after that, and they were in, I think, the 60s or 70s.
Wow. Okay, so it's safe to say we're probably having the best sex in our generation now than ever, perhaps?
I would hope so.
I hope so, right?
Yeah, look, I don't know now. I feel like a lot of us are actually quite disconnected in this day and age, yeah.
So you're saying before that, so self-exploration has a role in actually deepening our connection with sex with our partner. So how does this work? How does our own sex exploration play a role with building a deeper, intimate connection with our partners?
I think self-pleasure is so, so important when it comes to your partnered sex life. And I think a lot of the time people assume, oh, if I'm in a relationship, particularly a long-term relationship, then my sexuality now belongs to my partner. And we can do one of two things, where either we'll outsource our pleasure and we'll be like, okay, my partner is now responsible for turning me on, for having sex with me, for making me come. Or we'll think, oh, I can only ever experience pleasure, sexual pleasure, with my partner. And then we kind of give our sexuality away. And self-pleasure is this act of like reclaiming your pleasure and coming back to your own sexuality. And it's so helpful because you can understand more about your own body. You can sort of map your own pleasure language. You learn what things turn you on, what kind of touch you like. And then you can use that vocabulary when you're in the bedroom with your partner and say, oh, actually, I like it a little bit slower, or could you go a little bit harder, or a little bit firmer, or circles, not up and down. And you can actually speak into what it is that you desire.
Have you seen anyone... like, I want to sort of debunk this because I've talked about this with my partner before. She's been like, she's had friends that were accused of cheating, right? Of pleasuring themselves or watching porn or something like this. Which I want to also understand that conversation, because I know it's been a thing that's the last few years. It feels like it keeps surfacing. People are like anti-porn, but I want to sort of understand this. So, what's your sort of opinion on anyone who has the idea of it's like, well, they can't do it by themselves because now I'm being left out? And
totally. And look, I understand this, and I think they're two separate issues: the porn and the self-pleasure. We can talk about that. At the end of the day, I think it's really important to remember that your sexuality is yours. You can choose to share it with your partner whenever you choose, but at the end of the day, it still belongs to you. And just because you're in a relationship doesn't mean that you're not allowed to have a relationship with your own body. That's not fair. And that feels like a bit of a sense of ownership. Now, from the other perspective, it is important to recognize that it could feel hurtful from the partner who is, not there and wants to be involved, but they could see it as an affront and go, why aren't you choosing me? And feel offended that like, oh, you're pleasuring yourself, but well, like, I'm here. Like, why don't you want to experience pleasure with me? And so that's a very valid concern. But at the end of the day, like, you don't own their pleasure, right? And I think it's important to have a really open and honest conversation about like, yeah, hey, I really like exploring my pleasure on my own and with you. If you notice that there's a dynamic happening where you're avoiding having sex with your partner and you only want to have self-pleasure sessions, then yeah, okay, there might be something below the surface there that you need to talk about. Why are you not feeling a desire with your partner? Then the porn conversation, which is definitely a big one. I'm absolutely not anti-porn, but I am pro-ethical porn. And I'm pro really intentional embodied self-pleasure and anti-mindless masturbation.
Okay, so break these down for us then.
So the difference between mindless masturbation and like intentional embodied self-pleasure is presence. Are you just kind of quickly rubbing one out because you're thinking, oh, I just like want to secretly do this, or you feel like you might have an addiction to pornography and there's a deep disconnection. You're not present, you're not in your body, you're just kind of like doing it and going through the motions. That's mindless, that's not connected. And as we said before, sex is something that is so intimate. It's one of the most intimate things that you can do with another person and with yourself as well. And so my approach is very much about embodiment. And so embodied self-pleasure is where you're really focusing on your sensations, on your body. You're getting out of your head. You're not really externalizing it so much. You're not outsourcing your pleasure and trying to find something else to turn you on. You can absolutely use different tools like video porn, ethical only, audio porn, erotica, your own fantasy and imagination. And that's totally fine. But it's about, are you there? Are you present with yourself? Or are you just kind of outsourcing it?
Yeah, right. Because I've heard, I guess, a lot of the narrative. I think anything in extreme is the problem.
Yeah.
Right. Because I've seen over the last like bunch of years, it's the topic, especially around men. It's like no porn, no, and all this stuff, and it's been an interesting sort of conversation. And I would also look at that. I'm like, you guys going anything one extreme is also an issue, but I think there's also a space for people that probably need it. But my understanding is why it's bad is because it desensitizes you, or it gives you a false representation. Because we grew up, how do we learn to have sex? We watch porn.
Yeah.
Right. And then we got older and we're like, right. And it's, so that was my sort of idea. Is like, why it's probably not great is because it desensitizes you and gives you a false sense of like, it's just not real. They're like paid actors. So what's your sort of perspective on that? Like, so what I hear is you're sort of not against it, but you're like, understand how to be in control, not let it control you sort of. But how does one find that balance, I guess, and not justify to themselves that they're actually escaping to go and watch porn?
Yeah, great question. Learning to have sex by watching porn is like learning how to drive watching The Fast and the Furious. That's not my quote, but I think it brilliantly captures what this is about. And like you said, if you're watching porn and you're desensitized to it, you start to the tendency is that you start to watch rougher and more violent and more aggressive stuff, more dopamine inducing content. And there's a very, very big lack of intimacy and connection and reality in that style of porn, which is why I say ethical porn, because there's a lot of incredible porn that's created that is ethical. The people are paid well. They are all consenting. It's a very ethical environment, and it's different. It shows more intimacy. It shows consent conversations. And I think that's incredibly important, that if you are consuming porn, choose good stuff and recognize, okay, is this a crutch? Am I dopamine chasing? Am I seeking something more and something more? And that's probably a sign, if you have a dependency on it, okay, I need to really check myself here and kind of come back to my body, come back to connection, come back to presence.
How can someone start to properly express their desires inside the bedroom with their partner without experiencing shame, guilt, fear of the conversation? It's one thing you said was really about to use self-exploration to understand yourself, to then bring it into your relationship.
Yeah.
So I imagine this would probably be the next part of the story to improving your sex life. But for the people who are like, I'm scared to tell them what I really want, or I feel bad to ask for this, how do they start to express their desires?
Yeah, I think that it's really important to make it fun and playful, because it can feel like a really heavy subject, and it can feel really scary to talk about something that is so taboo, that is shrouded in so much shame, and to speak up for your own pleasure, because, it's a scary thing to talk about, but also you've got to consider your partner's feelings, and you don't want to offend them or hurt them. And so there's a lot of layers there. I really understand that fear of speaking into this. But I always say just make it fun, playful, turn it into a game. I've got this really great practice that I like to call a desire menu. And it's essentially a list of like sexual acts and different things that you can try. And you go through and you write yes, no, or maybe, and then you each compare. And you have a chat about it. And you turn it into a fun conversation rather than like a serious sit down, like we need to talk about our sex life. And immediately the guards go up. Make it fun, make it playful.
So I was going to ask you, have you got some sort of script or something? So can we get that? Like, can we throw it in the show notes or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
sick. So
sure.
I like that idea. So actually it's writing down like, here's what I like, here's what you like, and then having a conversation.
Yeah.
Where do you sort of stand in, like, let's say, for example, one person's like wild and wants to try all these different, let's go to the extremes. One person's like, I want to find the one and settle down and just have sex with one person for the rest of my life. And the other person's like, I just want to have orgies, but I love you, but I want to have open relationships and I want crazy stuff. Like, how does that, but like, if this person's, like, because you said before, you gotta be mindful of the other person. And how does one fully express themselves and honor themselves, but without not self-sacrifice? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Definitely.
To make sure the other person doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, when it comes to like open relationships, that is definitely a whole can of worms. And it is absolutely possible. And this is where I think the desire menu is really helpful, because what you do is you go through it, and if anyone has a no, it's a no for both of you. And if anyone has a maybe and the other person has a yes, you try it. And then you decide later if it's a yes or a no. If anyone has a no, you don't push them on that. You have to respect someone's boundaries. This is something that I'm not interested in and I will not change my mind on. You can't try and change someone's mind. And, before you go into this practice, you need to understand the difference between boundaries and agreements. Like, a boundary is something that I am setting for me. And like, I have to set that and say, hey, I'm not interested in that and I'm not going to budge there. An agreement is something that the two of us decide on together, and we say, hey, I think in our relationship, we'd like to try this together, and we both agree to do that. And so you need to understand the difference between that. If you're thinking of opening a relationship, it's so, so important to be really, really solid in your relationship first, because I've seen too many people try opening a relationship to fix. Doesn't work.
Do the sprinkles and pickles on top?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I saw a book, I really forget what it was called, so many years ago, because there was a period in my life where I'm like, I think I can have like a polyamorous relationship.
Yeah.
And I had like two kind of relationships with a third kind of.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to try this thing. And they all knew about each other. And, and what I realized at the end of it was I wouldn't fully commit to either of them.
Yeah.
So I was like, it feels like half empty. It's fun, but like it's not sustainable. But I read in this book that this guy and their partner, that the relationship taught them the ultimate level of self-development, because in self-development, it's about going, how essentially can I have ultimate self-development is going, how can nothing have control over my emotions? Like, emotional intelligence is, how can no external force change how I feel inside, because I'm always in control of this. And then he goes, when they started growing in their relationship, they wanted to start open relating and dating other people. And it brought up all of their shit. Yeah. And through that process, they went through the journey of how to detach from everything and have any external thing not better control them anymore. I still think I'm all in the personal development world. It's interesting. It's an interesting journey to still, I'm not sure I want to go down though.
Honestly, and I completely agree because I've been on that journey too. And it is the ultimate test in personal development because you think you're all good. And then you like even just consider, let alone maybe see your partner with someone else and you're like, oh God. And a lot of people think, oh, I couldn't do it because I'd get too jealous. And assuming that there's people in the world that don't get jealous. And yeah, you can get to that point. But jealousy is a very, very normal thing and it happens, but it's how you navigate it. And so it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for everybody by any means, but it is for a lot of people. But yeah, it takes like so much communication. When I explored polyamory, I learned so much about communication that I never learned in my years of monogamy. And I really credit that time to like the level of communication that I have now in my current relationship. I'm like, oh, damn, I learned so much because there's so much in monogamy that is assumed. And you're just like, you think, these are the rules that I see played out in movies and in culture. And you never have the conversation with your partner. Hey, what is okay with you? What do you consider cheating? What do you consider okay? What are our rules and our boundaries and our agreements in this relationship? You don't do that often in monogamy. I know a lot of people don't. Some people do, and I think that's amazing. And that's like the work that I want to create in this world. But having that experience of open relating really taught me how to like actually talk about things from the get-go.
So back to the foundation of our cake.
Yeah.
Because I understand the 5 archetypes, the sex archetypes, and I want to dive into these so people can really understand these differences. Would that be part of really understanding the foundation first, understanding your own drivers and needs?
Are you referring to the erotic blueprints?
Yes. Yeah, like sexual, kinky, these ones. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's a really, really helpful aspect for sure.
So this would help us build the solid foundation.
Yeah.
Can we go into what are these different 5 sex blueprints, you call them?
Yeah.
Let's dive into this.
Cool. So this is the work of a sex educator named Jaya.
That's where I first heard them.
Yeah. So Jaya created this amazing quiz that anybody can do online. You just look up erotic blueprints. And there are 5 erotic blueprints. They are sensual, sexual, kinky, shapeshifter, and
Energetic.
Thank you. And so you take this quiz and you kind of figure out which is your like top 1 and 2 and then the others. And it's so helpful to understand the way that you relate to sex. So people who are sensual, for example, they're turned on by the senses, they're turned on by the mood lighting and like the texture of the fabric of the sheets around them. They're turned on by all of the senses. They need their full sensuality to be like embodied to feel a deep desire for sex, and that enhances their experience. Sexual are the people who are just like, let's get it on.
Can we go? What's the so the first one was sensual.
Yeah.
So the things that they love, all those things. What's their turn off?
Turn off would be probably a sexual approach, like just straight to it, no build up, no kind of like delicious embodiment. It's a very, very polarizing and often a sensual will end up with a sexual, and you really have to kind of compromise here because a sexual archetype or blueprint is someone that's like, oh, you're naked, I'm hard, let's go. Right. And they don't need as much build up. They're turned on by like just the act of sex itself. Whereas the sensual is more like, I'm turned on by all of like the intentional touch and the slow massaging and that build up. Then you've got an energetic. And an energetic is someone who is turned on by that sort of deep connection. They might be turned on by more tantric kind of practices, feeling this intimacy between you. It could even be like that intimacy and that touch, that like touchless touch, and that feeling of like the energy flowing through your body, through breath, for example. The people that are a little bit more like spiritually minded, and like the tease and that build up will really turn them on. Then you've got kinky. So a classic kinky person is someone who is turned on by the taboo, the things that are left of center, the things that are a little bit like maybe darker or just not as regular, let's say vanilla sex. And so they're turned on by that suspense and those different types of edges that they can explore. Then you've got the shapeshifter. So the shapeshifter is essentially all of them. And they need novelty. They need to try all different things. They really, really like variety.
So what are the biggest turnoffs for these last ones? Biggest turnoffs for shapeshifters?
A shapeshifter is like same. Like same thing all the time. It's a
so they need variety.
They need variety.
Okay. Turnoffs for kinkies?
Is like just again samey kind of sex. Vanilla, predictable, just not as adventurous and kinky.
And energetic?
Energetic? I think a turn off for an energetic would be just like going straight for the goods. You know, not taking the time to kind of feel that connection between the two of you.
Have you found, are any one of these archetypes more prone for cheaters?
Cheaters? Oh, I feel like that would probably be way too much of a generalization.
Okay.
Like, it's hard to say because
the way I hear it, I'm like, people who are sexual or kinky, because kinkies get off on the danger, or like, you know, the taboo, the different. I was just wondering, it's the first time I ever thought, I'm like, I wonder if you were to poll, you know, 100 of each and be like, have you ever cheated? Have you ever cheated? Or
I wonder, and like, that's interesting research to do. But the thing is, when you know this about yourself and your partner, you can start to kind of create and curate a relationship where your needs are being met both ways. And I highly recommend this quiz for everybody listening. It's really, really helpful to understand more about yourself and your partner.
So what does one do? Like, let's say, let's get one end of the extreme. Say you have a sexual or a kinky with an energetic or a sensual.
Yeah.
One just wants to get in, just turned on by, you know, immediate, and the other's like, no, I need an hour, I need essential oils, I need a massage. How do you sort of how do you navigate that relationship and make sure that both needs to be met and it's great?
So, I mean, first, definitely some kind of compromise between those two extremes. You know, maybe it's not a full hour, but maybe it's not immediately. Maybe it's a half hour. And you're sort of meeting in the middle there. And then if we're talking sensual and sexual, for example, maybe the sensual needs to warm themselves up and get themselves ready a little bit before approaching sex with their sexual focused partner. And so that might be like taking a long bath before the date night. It might be sort of doing your own self-pleasure practice or kind of feeling into that sense of self-seduction and then leading into sex with your partner. Whereas a sexual, like maybe sometimes if they're just like fully craving it in the moment and their partner isn't, then just say, okay, cool. Hey, honey, do you want to go self-pleasure? That's cool with me. Go for it. Or like, hey, I'll watch. Like, that'll be really fun and like sexy as well. But I'm just not feeling it. And I think it's really important to be able to have those conversations and know that just because one person is craving it doesn't mean that it has to happen and that it's okay to approach sex in the way that feels good for you.
Well, what is the average, like, good amount of times a healthy couple should be having sex per week?
As much as the person who wants it least.
As much as the person who wants it least. Interesting.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, this is obviously extremely nuanced, but if there's one person who's craving it a lot more, it's not fair for the partner who isn't craving it, isn't on the same page, to force themselves to have sex, right? Because they're just not going to feel it. And it's not like, you don't want to have sex that you don't want to have, right? And so I would suggest in this situation, if there is a big discrepancy here, someone's craving it every single day, one person's craving it once a month or once a year. All right, let's talk about why we might have this discrepancy, why you might not feel this desire. Is there a sense of festering resentment under the surface? Is there something that has been said in the past that is blocking this partner from wanting and desiring sex, from trusting their partner, from feeling safe, from feeling desirable? Is there something in the way? Are you just not turned on because you have screaming kids that are, you know, having bath time at this particular time every single night, and it's just you're not feeling good, you're feeling touched out, you've been breastfeeding all day, whatever. And how can you transition into feeling sexual again? Like, there's a lot of things when it comes to nuance. It's the most, when it comes to libido, it's the most nuanced topic ever. And there's so many factors that can come into play. And it's not as simple as just like, just do this one thing and you'll be fine. There's a lot that comes into it. And it really starts with the conversation.
How can a couple that have been together for, let's say, 5 years, 10 years, they've got kids,
Yeah.
they used to have sex all the time, and it's not anymore. It's slowed down and whatever. They've both fallen into this routine. What's your advice to rekindle this, to re-spark it, to really bring passion and a lot of spice back into their sex life?
Start flirting again. You know, I think that in long-term relationships, you can very easily end up as roommates and people that just see each other often but don't connect that often. So start flirting with each other, set actual date nights, and also, maybe controversial, but take sex off the table completely for a while. For a period of time, say, the goal is not sex. I want to take you on a date, and we're going to do this, and we're going to go out to this romantic restaurant, and we're going to come home, and I'm going to give you a massage. We're going to have a bath together, whatever it is, but it's not for the purpose of sex. Because often the biggest libido killer is expectation and pressure. If I go, okay, my partner has said, let's have a date night, but I just know they're craving sex, and now I feel that pressure and that expectation, and that's heavy. And that can just completely block you from feeling open to pleasure. When you think, the only reason that my partner is kissing me right now is because they want to have sex. Or they're grabbing my butt out of nowhere while I'm doing the dishes because they want to have sex. And so your brain is going to go, no, I'm not, you haven't taken the time to kind of really make me feel desired. And so that's a really, really important thing to consider.
So you're saying to me before, so a lot of people do come to you and some of your most popular topics are around squirting.
Yeah.
And the other things. So for the people, for some reason, this is the topics that they want to hear.
Yeah.
What is the science around this? What is the juice that people actually, pun intended on that one?
Juice.
What is, I was trying to think, I'm like, how do I bring this into the conversation without me directly saying, how do you make a girl squirt? But this is the topic that trends so much for you. And I think even growing up, the whole stigma is some can, some can't.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to know why people come to you so much for this topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, it's a very alluring topic, and, porn has definitely popularized it and kind of glamorized it a little bit. But squirting, I find it so funny that it's something that people are like fixated on, because it's literally just like a bodily process that can happen if it has the right conditions. And the right conditions are you feel really, really open and safe and trusting of your partner. You feel super, super comfortable. You've been really, really, really warmed up, like nice, long, juicy foreplay. And then just the right stimulation. If you are someone who squirts, and not everybody is, not everyone has had that experience. You can definitely learn and kind of train yourself. But the thing is with squirting is that squirting and orgasm can happen together, but they are also often completely separate things that happen. So you might squirt and not orgasm, and you might orgasm and not squirt, or you might actually have them both together, but it's not this holy grail of orgasm to squirt. That's not what we're after. It's not a sign that, oh my God, you've done a great job because she squirted and that must mean she had the best orgasm of her life. Not necessarily. Sometimes, but not really.
So is it something that, for the men listening to this, is it something that they should try to learn and pursue, or are they putting too much emphasis on it? It's diminishing returns.
Yeah, it's if you want to, sure. If she wants to, sure. But it's not really the be all and end all. It is a very fun thing, and if you're both excited to explore it, go for it. Put a splash blanket down and take your time and work up to it and see what happens. But again, the pressure, the expectation, that's going to stop your ability to squirt. Most often it happens because you're like, oh my gosh, I was just like having the best time ever. And then suddenly there it is. You know, if you're trying and you're trying to push it out, it's not necessarily going to happen. And it's not the be all and end all.
So a lot of people come to you for your courses to learn the tips.
Yeah.
They want what did you say? The tongue
Tactics.
The tongue tactics.
Course, yeah.
People want these little, these tactics, these strategies. For the people that literally came on to this podcast for it, what's something you can give them?
Okay,
that they can immediately take and go, that's a new tactic I can use, or that's something like, I can try it today and leave a comment on the episode and be like, tried it, worked.
Did it. Okay, well, firstly, I need to understand, are we talking about going down on someone with a penis or a vulva?
Can we do both?
Absolutely, we can. Okay, so pussy first. First thing that I want you to think of is not actually about technique at all. And this is something that I teach within tongue tactics. I absolutely teach the types of touch and the direction and all of those things. But the first thing for people with a vulva is that you need to make them feel safe. Because for us, we're very, very connected to our head. And if we are thinking of our shopping list, we're thinking what to make for dinner. If we're thinking, oh my God, I hope that they're enjoying this. Like, are they getting bored? Are they getting tired? Do they like this? Do I smell? Oh my God. Then it's going to be really, really hard for us to actually experience that pleasure. And so your enthusiasm, your excitement to be there, your voicing how much you're enjoying the process is going to help so much. And again, with everybody's different. Some people are like, no, I don't need to know. Others are like, yes, please tell me, like, I need to understand that you're enjoying this. And so compliment them and say, like, I could be here all day. Make us know that there's no rush. There's no force. You don't have to come immediately. You don't have to come as fast as like they usually would if they were receiving a blowjob, for example. It's so important for us to know that we can just relax and enjoy. So saying things like, I could be here all day. I love going down on you. Oh my God, you taste so good. You smell so great. This is delicious. All of those kind of things are really helpful for our nervous system to kind of soften and relax. And then less is more. So don't try and do too much. Don't go and DJ the clit. We need like soft, it's a lot less is more when it comes to pussy pleasure. And I think that some people think that they need to be like writing the alphabet with their tongue and switching it up all the time. Not necessarily. I always think when it comes to the vulva is you're working your way from the outside in. So we don't go straight for the goods. We don't go straight for the clit. We don't go straight for fingers or penis inside. We go, okay, I'm going to take my time and I'm going to like seduce this whole person, turn the whole body on. Then I'm going to come into the thighs and then gently go in towards the center. And penetration should be the very, very last thing. Essentially, you want your partner begging for you to be inside them. Like you need them to be so ready and craving it before you go inside with fingers, with a cock, with dildo, whatever it is. You need your partner to be like so ready, because if we experience penetration too soon, it's just not going to feel that good. And that's like just the simple anatomy thing. So we all know that when someone with a penis gets hard, gets aroused, they get hard, blood flows to the cock, boom, it's hard, ready to go, right? Same thing happens for us. We have erectile tissue as well. It's just internal and it's around like the vaginal canal.
You absolutely should have brought your little niece.
Should have brought my vulva.
I have to do a round two.
I will bring her next time. And like that's really important. We need the blood flow around, they're called vestibular bulbs. We need our blood flow, which takes time to build, to feel that deep pleasure. So take your time. Take your time. Slow the fuck down is my message.
All right. Let's just solve to the men. Slow the fuck down.
Yeah.
Okay. And for the ladies listening.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So blowjob. Now, the technique is definitely something that we want to think about. I always talk about the rhythm and really setting a nice kind of pace. So in my course, I talk about something called the magic sequence, and it's the thing that most people will comment on after the course. They're like, oh my God, I tried the magic sequence. His mind was blown. He couldn't stop talking about it. He got text the next day. And it's essentially, there's a lot to it, but you're kind of creating like a pepper grinder sort of motion, and you're using your hand and your mouth, and they're kind of both going in tandem. And I like to go 1, 2, 3, like in and out, and then deep. And then 1, 2, 3 deep. You can kind of emulate deep throating in a way that is more sustainable for you. So yeah, the magic sequence is a little bit involved, but it is a game changer.
This is fascinating. What in the whole work you've been in, what would you say is the biggest myth that you've come across?
The biggest myth
That you wish more people understood?
I think the thing that I would like more people to understand is that foreplay isn't just the few minutes of like making out before the quote unquote sex begins. Like sex is such a big term that you can kind of use so globally, and there's so much to it, but foreplay, like this idea of just one simple thing, making out, touching, grinding, fingering, whatever, that's not necessarily the thing that's going to get you there. You need to really extend this out. And I always think about that outside in concept that I mentioned, like thinking of the entire body, turn the whole body on before we go straight for the goods. Take your time.
Mm. And we sort of start this whole conversation talking around, guilt and shame and I guess insecurities and things like this. For people who still struggle with that, like where do they sort of start with unpacking these things, these emotions while they're there? How can they start to move through this so they can actually really cook the cake that they want to eat? So
it goes back to figuring out what beliefs are in your subconscious. So what I would ask you is, throughout this conversation, listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, what judgments have come up? What like icks have come up? And whose voice is that? Saying, ew, that's gross. Oh my God, I couldn't say that. Oh no, that's wrong. No, you shouldn't like sex that much. Whose voice is saying that? Where did that come from? Is it a teacher? Is it a family member? Like, is it something that you saw on social media once? Like, what is it? And is it serving you? Because then you can choose to kind of like weed it out and go, actually, no, I don't want these pickles in my cake. I'm going to take these beliefs out. I'm going to work through it and really reflect on what serves me. And then I'm going to add in things that actually really serve me and change my beliefs. And it's a process for sure, because you have to bring that sense of self-awareness to your subconscious and what is really, really holding you back when it comes to sex and sexuality and sexual expression. But when you do that, then everything starts to shift and unravel.
So it's a big self game.
Yeah.
Like understanding self.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you seen people's, because a lot of entrepreneurs stream this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen people's businesses thrive more once they really dial in their sex life?
Yeah, definitely. And there are a lot of people who kind of do blend the two because, spiritually speaking, the seat of your sensuality, your sexuality, your sacral is all about your creativity, right? And sharing what you're creating. And so there's a lot of link between pleasure and allowing pleasure in your life and showing up more fully. I often talk about this idea of how you do sex is how you do life. And if you don't feel like you can fully express yourself sexually, then you're not expressing yourself fully in life, because there's one part that's like repressed and you're pushing it down and you're forgetting about it, or you're, pushing it to the side. And the more that you allow yourself to fully express your sexuality, then you're going to be more magnetic.
What's because I really want to tap into what's going on in the minds of some people who they want to be more expressed. They really want to have this amazing relationship, but I guess there's the fear of having the conversation with the partners or they express themselves. Is there anything else other than like doing this checklist, or like what if they pull out this checklist and they're like, their partner's dealing with their own shit. Like, I don't want to do this. Or like, how do they sort of start to navigate that and really not feel trapped anymore?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing, you know, if you're in a relationship and one person wants to do the work and the other doesn't, you can't force someone else to do it. And I think it's like a lot of self-development, right? A lot of people find themselves in relationships where one person wants to grow and be better and expand, and the other is like, no, I'm going to stay here and stay small. And you cannot force that other person to expand and grow with you, but you can kind of be an example. You can be a light. You can go on that journey yourself and see if they get inspired to come with you. You can invite them to come with you, but you can't force them to come along. And I also highly recommend, you know, blaming me and saying, hey, I listened to this podcast and maybe you like it. It was really interesting and it made me think a lot. And sharing the tools that you're coming across on this journey and seeing if they bite. You know, you're just kind of like throwing things out there, but you can't force someone to explore their sexuality if they don't want to. And there could be very good reasons that people don't want to go there as well. And it's really important that we're mindful of that. Some people have, you know, a lot of trauma related to sexuality. And so we need to be mindful of unpacking things that people might not be ready to unpack.
Would you recommend Tantra for everybody or just the energetics and sensuals?
Oh, gosh, I would recommend it for everybody. I think it's such a beautiful practice, but it depends if you're ready for it, right? If you're open for it.
How would you explain Tantra for the people who have just heard this word right now?
Yeah. I like to think of Tantra as sort of sensuality on steroids. It's this deep connection to the senses, to your the sensations. You're really turning things up like you're viewing the world in Technicolor. It's about really connecting to the pleasure in the world. And I like to call it, in my world, it's simple pleasure, sensual pleasure, and sexual pleasure. You've got these tiers of pleasure that you can explore, whether it's in the body or in the world. And tantric practice, if we're talking like the sexual side of Tantra, is very much energetic. It is about connecting deeply through breath, through sound, through movement, using these three tools to really enhance the sensation of pleasure in your body and to channel it and to let it flow through your body. So a lot of the time we think of sex and we think like genital focus. It's like, okay, how hard is my dick and how wet is my pussy? And it's like, oh my gosh, that's all we're thinking about. We're just thinking of the act of sex itself. But Tantra is like your whole body is a sexual organ. Your brain is a sexual organ. You can experience these transcendental states, like I said earlier, with just the breath. You can orgasm with just the breath, with just your mind. These take a lot of practice, a lot of intention. So it's not for everybody, but I highly recommend it.
How would someone start that if they wanted to get into that? Is that something you teach or?
It's not something that I teach directly. I teach more, my realm is more about sensuality and it takes a lot from the tantric teachings, but I wouldn't say that I'm a tantrika myself because I'm not quite that far into the spiritual path. There's a lot of amazing tantra focused teachers out there that really focus on the spiritual aspect of it. You know, try listening to some podcasts, going on YouTube, finding some teachers that you resonate with.
Because is it a quite spiritual thing? Because to be honest, like a mentor of mine said to me years ago, he's like, go and get into Tantra, and to be honest, I haven't fully actually, because every time I look into it, it's like the people are just fucking bearded hippies and the women have hair under their arms. And I'm like, you know, they're just not my people. Would you say, is that the whole sort of Tantra space very this spiritual sort of type of people, or maybe have I just been looking in the wrong places?
No, I think you're right. There is definitely a...
So they are. Okay, so everyone's felt like essential oils.
It's like, the thing is like with searching for like a group of tantric people, you're definitely going to find the more spiritual leaning because it comes from a spiritual practice. It's a yogic practice at the end of the day. It has its roots in yoga. And so that's kind of naturally where it's come from. But and this is why I don't call myself a tantrika, because I love spirituality. I see so much value in it, but I years ago kind of went down the yoga like rabbit hole, and I got a bit jaded and I was like, okay, I'm coming back out. I got a little bit annoyed with the spiritual bypassing, and I just wanted to like really recognize I live in this world. I'm here, I am grounded, and yes, I can reach these transcendental states and all of that, but I want to live in this world. I don't want to try and get to another like ether. Like, I'm happy here. And so I kind of rejected it a little bit, but I think there's so much to learn from it. And you don't have to suddenly become a deep rabbit hole, spiritual, hippie kind of person to study Tantra, to explore Tantra, to have tantric practices and have tantric sex with your partner. It's literally just energy. It's just how people are packaging it up and what kind of practice and roots they have. But at the end of the day, it's energy and it's accessible, and you can absolutely explore it regardless of, you know, where you sit on the spiritual spectrum.
I love it. Eleanor, this has been super fun. I definitely want to do a round 2, and you got to bring these little models with you.
I'll bring Vivian the vulva. Yeah.
Vivian the vulva. I love it. So where can everybody find you on social media? Check out everything you do. Where do you live?
So my Instagram is at Eleanor Hadley, and my website is the same, eleanorhadley.com. Those are my main places, so find me there.
Amazing. So to wrap this up, I got a final question for you.
Okay.
If you were to go back to your 18-year-old self and give her 30 seconds of advice, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I would tell her to prioritize her pleasure and to speak up for what she wants and not just go with the flow when it comes to sex.